Okay, this is our how to solder video part 2. This is our fuzzy metal stuff you get where you buy the soldering iron stand and the soldering iron, and it's much better than the wet sponge for cleaning up the tip of the soldering iron. You always have to keep your tip clean, otherwise your soldering iron won't work. I'm recycling an old angle jack, and I'm putting together a speaker project. I'm taking this crappy Fender Frontman 212 speaker, and I'm going to solder it to this jack so that we can use it in a Princeton. The speaker is from a junked amp, and it's very low efficiency, very not poor sound quality, but very, very low efficiency, very low dB output. And I want to use that speaker for low volume gigs so that the amp is less efficient, or things we want to do. So I'm going to put this in the clamp, and I'm going to do what's called tinning the ends. So I take my solder, I heat the wire, and then when the temperature is right, the solder will run right in to the wire all the way down it. So that's called tinning the ends. Now the ends are easier to work with. You always want to be careful when you're soldering so you don't burn yourself. That's why the stand is so important. Without it, you'll either start a fire, or the soldering iron will end up rolling around and damaging something you're working on, or worse yet, it'll roll off the table, as happened to a friend of mine years ago. And then he was smart enough to catch it with his hand, and then he had to go to the hospital. Anyway, enough of my rambling. Once again, we use our mounting tool here. You can never have enough good tools like good wire cutters, things like that, because we're going to want to trim this. I've decided the yellow wire is going to be the hot wire. And the other tool you will need, this is called a solder sucker. It's basically like a spring-loaded vacuum pump. And what you do is you heat up the solder you want to remove, and then this guy pops the solder out of there. So we've pre-tinned our end, and what I like to do as well, I like these surgical type clamps you can get at a few different places. They're super handy, and I keep pulling this thing off the screen. So got our surgical clamp guy going on. Again, the tip is hot, so I made the mistake there. I didn't heat the work first, so that's why you heat the work first. I got a little bubble of solder, and it didn't fuse the parts. Now everything's heated evenly, and I'm getting a good solder joint. After this, I'm going to go ahead and trim my excess piece here. I'm going to make sure nothing's making contact with anything else, and this is going to be a little bit tricky here because now I have to get, actually I'm going to trim this up and shorten it. One of the more useful tools to have is a good professional set of wire strippers. So it's still too long. There we go. So we had pre-tinned our end, but that probably isn't important for this particular application. I'm going to use my little clamp buddy. Once again, to get my work where it needs to be. There we go. Now I'm going to heat the work again before I introduce the solder. This is a fairly heavy metal. It's a metal item, so it acts as a heat sink, and so it takes a little more heat application to create a proper joint. after doing a joint like this, the jack is going to be super hot, so we're not going to touch it for a couple of minutes. We're going to clean our tip, put it back in there, go back to our wider angle view. Okay. So we've got one terminal marked as positive, one terminal marked as negative. In this case, there's an open hole. We're going to wrap our wire through. We haven't pre-tinned it. And this is a good hot soldering iron. I think it's 35 or 45 watts. So this guy, once again, we will heat the work. Let's zoom in on that. We're going to heat the work and the solder will flow automatically. So first we heat what we want heated. Doesn't take long with a good iron, with a clean tip. And you'll see it change to the point where it's all liquefied and it's running down the whole thing. There it goes, it just changed. That's it. Second one. Apply the heat. Feed in a little solder and it will change character. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and go everywhere. There it goes. So those are good quality joints. Our little project is done. Those of you with sharp eyes will notice that this is not an authentic Fender Princeton box. It's an original amp, but the box died long ago. Derek Bell out of Trenton, Ontario built a fabulous box, and of course since he was building a new box he could put a 12-inch baffle in it, which is my preferred way of running a Princeton.